I'm Jian Ghomeshi. I live here in Toronto, Canada, and I'm a proud Canadian, and I'm a proud Iranian. I want to thank this wild colors of Benetton mixture of political parties for joining us here today. It's quite remarkable. Thanks to Jason Kenney, thanks to Mauricio Bevilacqua, and thanks to Olivia Chow for representing their parties and showing that there's cross-political support for this day. I'm going to just give a short speech because I think to a certain extent we're done with speeches and we just want to be showing our solidarity as much as possible, and that's what we're going to be doing today, and that's what we're already doing today. This is a remarkable day. Let's not make any mistakes about what's happening today. If you followed the news reports already this morning, because they're a few hours ahead of us, there's demonstrations happening in Sydney, Australia, in Brussels, in Tokyo, just a couple of hundred in Tokyo, but that's not bad. Happening in over 100 cities around the world. You know that this is happening in Washington, D.C. today in a big way, in Tehran as well, all around the world. And let's not lose sight of the significance of that, okay? If we just zoom out a little bit. Because these are people around the world, Iranians from the Iranian diaspora, and non-Iranians as well. Just like the political leaders we just heard from, gathering together around the world to speak for a democratic, a free, and a beautiful Iran. Now, over the last 3 decades, Iran in the Western media hasn't exactly been a lovable creature, nor have Iranians been portrayed fairly. We know this as Iranians. Between stereotypes about us being barbaric, terrorists, generalizations about the way the Iranian people are and the way that Iran, the country, in fact the Persian legacy is, have been very difficult to live through. You know, until I was in my late teens, I didn't even tell anybody I was Iranian, and both my parents are Iranian, because I grew up where I was growing up, there were no other Iranians, and I didn't want to be called a terrorist. So people would say, "Oh, Jian, that sounds kind of French," and I'd say, maybe it is. And then I started to realize that this isn't about what Iran is and what Iran has been and what the Iranian people are and what my family is. It's about ideas that have been imposed on what the Persian legacy is and what Iran has been. And let this be an opportunity around the world for a flowering, for fertile ground, for the real Iran to be seen, and the real Iranian people to be seen, the Iranian people of progressive ideas, the Iranian people of technological and scientific progress, the beautiful legacy of poetry from Iran, of dance, of literature, of music. That is the Iran we know. And that's the Iran people haven't been seeing. That's the Iran people haven't been seeing for years. Let this be an opportunity for an inspiration and an education about what Iran is. And it's a remarkable day. And it's just a stepping stone. It doesn't begin or end here. This is just one day. But it's remarkable what's happening around the world. And I think some of you probably get misty-eyed at the idea that people around the world are actually speaking up for Iranians. We're not used to this. Now, having said that, there are more pressing issues at hand than teaching people about what Iran is and has been. Iranians, young people, families continue to be imprisoned, continue to be tortured, and indeed continue to be killed for speaking out for representing, and for wanting basic human rights. The right to a free vote, the right to free speech, the right to free assembly. These are not profound expectations. These are basic human rights. And they're being taken away and cracked down by a regime who doesn't seem to care about the citizens anymore. They just care about staying in power. And they've proven that they'll do whatever they can to stay in power. And we're here to say, not on our watch. You're not going to do that on our watch. Just yesterday we have a news report that, well, this, as it came out today, that Mohsen Ruhollah Amini, who's a young man who was part of the protests on July 9th in the streets of Tehran, has died in Evian prison. He was the son of a chemist, and he actually happened to be, his father happened to be involved in the political side, supporting one of the other candidates, not Ahmadinejad. And this young man died in prison. Why? Because he attended a protest on July 9th. He died yesterday. This is not the world we want to live in. I want to say something. I want to use a slogan that we've put up here, the whole world is watching. And when I say these words, if you will, I want to say those words and I want you to repeat them to me. The whole world is watching.
The whole world is watching.
Louder, give it to me. The whole world is watching.
The whole world is watching.
Now let's think about where those words actually originated. Because that slogan was first used in 1968, students of American history will know this, as an anti-war slogan outside the Democratic Convention in Chicago. And the protesters who were fighting for democracy and to be heard, a lot of young students, some misled, some not, realized that for the first time in history, what they were doing was being covered on network television, and that people were seeing the results of the brutality of the police putting them down. And they started chanting this, what became this iconic anti-war chant, the whole world is watching. In 1999, a couple of decades later, and 10 years ago in Seattle, in the anti-globalization protests, you might remember those before 9/11, that was where a lot of people were channeling their energies in terms of wanting to change the world. In Seattle, there were hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, and they realized that for the first time, it wasn't just network television covering them, but it was CNN and 24/7 news, that they could be seen and that the word was getting out to the rest of the world. And they took up this chant, the whole world is watching. 10 years later, we know that this isn't just a revolution in Iran, and we might as well call it that at this point, because it's the fermenting of a revolution, and it's not going to go away. This is a cyber revolution as well. We all know this. This is about YouTube. This is about digital cameras. This is about Facebook. This is about Twitter. This is about harnessing new technology, as young Iranians have been doing, and who are quite adept at, we might add, and sending the message around the world. This is a whole new level where people not just see what's happening in Iran outside of the world, and we've been watching those pictures, but people see what's happening outside of the world in the rest of the world, and people in Iran see what's happening outside of the world as well. In every way, the whole world is watching. Right now, here in Toronto, Canada, with these cameras, digital cameras, people Facebooking, people Twittering, the whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. And the message we're sending to those who would undermine, those who would abuse human rights, those who would torture, from Mashhad to Qom, is that the whole world is watching. From Abadan to Isfahan, the whole world is watching. From Shiraz to Yazd, the whole world is watching. From Tabriz to Tehran, the whole world is watching. The whole world is watching, and we won't let them get away with it. We won't let them get away with it.